My lords, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to add a very warm welcome from myself to you attending this, our 8th annual City Week. City Week is a joint venture between ourselves, the UK government, the City UK, the City of London Corporation, the UK Finance. It's the premier event of its kind. It's the leading forum on international financial services. It looks at the opportunities and the challenges facing the industry, and it's held once a year.
We want the financial services industry at our side, using your knowledge, expertise and experience to help shape this country's trade policy and our place in the world.
The UK is a crucible of capital and innovation, and we want to keep it bubbling away.
So we live in a world increasingly where individuals expect things to be personalised to them.
Climate change risk is a financial risk. I mean, in the last 6 years, coal companies have lost 75% of their value.
We are, of course, very aware that it's forecast, for instance, that China will be the second largest insurance market in the world by 2020.
I think what the highlight of our panel was looking across the board at all the opportunities that exist and recognising that there's a terrific appetite internationally for working closely with London and the rest of the UK industry.
Ladies and gentlemen, Brexit is posing many challenges. For the financial sector, the Commission's first priority is to safeguard financial stability and ensure investor protection.
I think it's useful to divide the issue of Brexit these days into two parts. The first one is the prospects and reasons for a transition or implementation period, and then secondly coming on to what we might call the steady state future world could look like.
As we've also heard, London is a global financial centre, and I'm confident will remain a global financial centre.
We've had a couple of examples recently where EU legislation has diverged from the global standard. And if that carries on, the UK needs the ability to remain aligned with global standards.
Ultimately, the UK needs to be in charge of the global markets hosted here, and the EU needs to be in charge of its local domestic markets.
I've just come off a panel where I chaired the debate on Britain's Brexit relationship for the financial services industry going forward, which was very interesting, very exciting.
9 years later, some actors may, however, be tempted to have short memories and to forget the lessons of the crisis. But diluting financial regulation would pave the way for the next financial crisis.
Both our countries are democracies. We share a common legal system and a common language, certainly, but also I think there is a lot we can do together because of the complementarities in our economies.
Europe is always a process. It's never, the end is never near, but it's never that far.
So equivalence will be decided in Paris?
Maybe in the Channel. On a boat.
Great Britain is very important for Switzerland economically, but we also believe that we are an interesting partner for the United Kingdom.
Go through strong banks, and we do have a very strong bank in Europe, super keen to lend, and a capital market union, which is going to develop investors willing to support SMEs.
And indeed, our session was about the Europe view of what's going on. In fact, what was interesting this morning is that you had on the one hand a session really giving the UK view of Brexit and where things were going, notably in the financial services sector. And on the other hand, the panel immediately following, really participants from global organizations that have a meaningful presence in the UK and where we gave our own perspective.
Regardless of whether we like Brexit or not, and regardless of Jan's passionate defense of the fact that we could still go back to it, we are where we are.
I just do think this is a very important and exciting time to be thinking trade. Just as I go around talking to members around the country, yes, they are concerned about Brexit, but they are also, I think, thinking about trade in ways we haven't before.
China in the new era will remain committed
to its fundamental national policy of opening up, will pursue development with our doors wide open.
So I think us as the financial community internationally, we see the car, we see the road, we see the fact that the accelerator is going down. I think we all need to buckle up.
It's very clear that the economic and intellectual firepower of China is going to be a key driver of future growth across the globe.
But I'm just about to go into a session on the UK-US relationship and what we should be looking for from the future. And after that, we'll be exploring what London needs to do to keep its place as the leading global financial centre that it is.
Undoubtedly true that the United States of America and the United Kingdom have a special and unique economic, political and diplomatic relationship.
And Brexit is really the catalyst for the UK to reconsider its future role and competitive positioning.
When we think about the normalisation and the unwinding of quantitative easing, are we ready for it? Seems to be a good place to start.
Economic policy provides the signal, and economic agents take that signal based on their expectations. And if there is no confidence and trust, very little can happen.
Today, around 25% of all professionally managed assets globally are invested according to some sort of sustainable investment strategy.
We can spend a lot of time, probably we would do if we were left to our own devices, arguing on this panel about what are the right standards and how should they be harmonised.
Yeah, we would say that something like 50% of our conversations now with institutional investors have an ESG dimension to it, and they are demanding data.
Yeah, so the session was all about the death of paper currency, or as I like to say, now polymer in the UK. And we had a real range of views. We had the Deputy Governor from the Norwegian Central Bank, where they have seen a very dramatic fall in demand for cash. Someone from the European Payments Council, where they're still seeing very strong cash across most of Europe. We had Charlotte Hogg from Visa, and an amazing innovation about using fingerprint technology.
We don't subscribe to passive, we don't do passive. Everything we do is active strategies, quite simply because it's not practical.
Alain, can you comment on what are your top risks and how do you factor geopolitical risk in your investment decisions?
Now, we try to be very focused and targeted in terms of the markets that we invest in, and that's because we believe that to invest long-term in these markets, you need to know the markets extremely well.
I think that global standard setting has been to the benefit of financial markets, of the financial system as a whole.
I think there's an important dialogue that can take place at the international level to understand the best thinking around anti-money laundering concerns, terrorist financing activities, as well as appropriate consumer protection standards.
Where are the big gaps that we can see as we survey the regulatory scene? And to me, one of the most obvious is the lack at this point of a really sort of a Basel-type capital standard for insurers.
Markets are global, market participants can move around, but ultimately rule setting is done and also the supervision is done either at a national level or at a regional level.
My session was very much about international or global financial regulation, global standard setting, what the relevance of that remains in the current environment, and I think all of the speakers from a wide variety of different backgrounds on the panel agreed that it remained a good thing, and there was a real case for international standards in a range of areas of global concern.
And at a time when the key words in the boardroom are probably agility and disruption, we're all hearing a lot about, I'm delighted to welcome to our panel three individuals who are at the forefront of the impact of technology on financial services.
We've realised that we cannot invent everything internally, and so our big issue is how do we let the outside in?
I mean, it's great to be able to join such an established panel and such established speakers through City Week. You know, I'm here to talk about fintech as the CEO of the membership body for UK Fintech. I'm here to really share our experiences of how we see fintech reinventing financial services.
And banks have done a pretty good job of incorporating those technologies. We now all have a bank on our mobile, and it's typically the bank we were at before.
I'd like to cover about sort of 3 broad topics, and I think those pick up on quite a lot of the themes that we've discussed over the last 2 days. And the first one is the C word, I'm afraid. It's culture.
If you see excess profits shown by excess salaries, that is a source of great concern.
And I think it's very difficult to have a unifying culture when you're a global organisation.
It's the premier event in the city in financial services. There's no question now. It's got that status. The fact that you can mix with so many people from so many different sectors, from so many different countries, is a very broad view on where we're going with financial services, not just in the UK, but globally.